Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first webinar for the year. From the PGA side, we would like to wish each and every one of you all of the best for 2024. Without any further ado, just a few local rules. Please ensure that your camera stays on throughout the session. This will be monitored because it's part of the new rules for the year, so please adhere to this. Also, questions, you can post it in the chat box, or alternatively, at the end of the session, you can unmute yourself and just ask a question, which is always a lot easier. We've got Master Professional Dave Usendorff, who's going to use his experience to guide us through the importance and benefits of onboarding. He's also an accomplished Master of Ceremonies and after dinner speaker, for which he is widely known. Dave has had the responsibility of managing golf clubs and estates in South Africa as well as Mauritius. With his experience of employing staff and building teams, Dave is going to share his knowledge and importance of onboarding. So without any further ado, Dave, thanks so much for joining us for this session, and we look forward to learning from you.
Thank you very much, Francois, and welcome to everybody. Happy 2024. I think it's going to be exciting. Yeah, we all had a relatively tough time last year. So, folks, I think we're in chatting to Adrian during the course of last year. The chat about onboarding was something that I've had some extensive experience with, and we sort of shared it and thought that at the beginning of the year it's kind of appropriate because invariably there's a lot of people looking for new opportunities, and our responsibility as an employer is quite important, and some of the things that we take for granted. So what I'd like to do is I just want to, if you please excuse me, I just need to get some noise out the background. I'm really sorry. Really sorry about that. So what I wanted to talk about is the onboarding process and the importance of it and what an influence it has on our business over a period of time. And that there's a multitude of different factors that will have that influence for each and every one of us. And I'm going to share a screen with you. But I thought I just wanted to give onboarding some context. And I want to do this in a very, very simple way. And we're going to talk about the employment of a new shop assistant or potential PGA professional apprentice. Okay, so at that level, you can obviously extrapolate that out into a multitude of different other areas where you would feel that there's a need to have this kind of knowledge in terms of employing people and integrating them into your business. So the three examples I'd like to start with, and just to give you some context, is around membership. At each one of our respective clubs, we have members joining and leaving at any given time, and it's quite an important thing. And the three examples I want to give you is historically, and this might not be all that relevant. A lot of the older guys on this call and ladies on this call will remember that when I'm going to go back to a personal experience. When I was 19 years old, I joined the Port Elizabeth Golf Club. Prior to that, I'd been a member at Rand Park, but under the tutorship of my father. So I was joined as a junior, and the responsibility of teaching me the rules, the etiquette, and how the club worked was purely on the shoulders of my dad, and he had to go through those things and ensure that I didn't misbehave, so it would impact on his membership. So it's a form of a sort of mentorship program. But when I was 19, I joined the Port Elizabeth Golf Club in Port Elizabeth. Obviously, it's a long, long time ago, and some of this is irrelevant, but I think it still has some powerful impact on the club. I would have to fill in a form. First, I'll get 4 or 5 people that would either second, third, fourth, and fifth me and all those good things. I'd fill in quite a comprehensive form with regard to who I am, what I am, how I operate, my golfing skills, etc. And that form would go on the notice board within the bar for a period of 20 to 30 days, during which time any of the current members could dispute my application. They could go there and say, we don't like this guy, he doesn't do whatever, or everybody would agree to it. It would then go to the committee. The committee would sit and see the value of my membership, and should I potentially be part of it, I would then have to play golf with either the captain or one of the committee members. And based on my behavior, my etiquette, and my golf acumen during that process, I would get either invited to join the club, and then I would go through a process of becoming a member. The second example, and it's relevant example right now, there's an exclusive golf club in South Africa where membership application can take up to 6 months. There's a very extensive due diligence done about you, all the things that you've claimed on your membership form. People have to vouch for you in a million different ways. And by doing that, they keep the traditions, the etiquette, and the culture of the golf club alive and well, and it has the opportunity to go into perpetuity. So I think that's important. The current situation that I find, and it's not at everybody, but it does happen, where if I was to go to certain clubs today with a credit card, I just go to the reception area and I ask the lady, I want to fill in a form. She just put my name, my email address, and my telephone number. She swipes my card for probably quite a lot of money in most instances. And if I find the first tee, well done, and off I go. And that's where the trouble starts, because I have no concept of the rules of golf, the etiquette of golf, and so on. I tend to let myself down, and that's invariably where the problem starts. So those three examples, one is an old one. I think it's still relevant and is required. The second one is an exclusive club, and the third one is something that we get exposed to a lot of the time. Now, in terms of onboarding of those members, if that was done correctly, there's quite a lot of things that happen, most importantly, retention, because people want to understand, want to be part of, and want to invest in a club environment. And if someone holds my hand and takes me through that process, I appreciate it, I enjoy it, and therefore I sort of want to play there, and it just changes the complexity of that experience. So I want to share the screen with you, because I think today we're talking about employing somebody. And invariably what happens in the instance that I set up right up front, when it's a junior person who's going to be a shop assistant, or a potential assistant professional who will become a member of the PGA, most of the time it's some kid who's been knocking around at the club, plays good golf, thinks that the golf business is for him. He's going to be able to play a lot of golf and get a lot of free stuff. And so he goes and applies for the job in your shop. And that job is answering the phone, vacuuming the floor, and kind of doesn't really engage the person in any way. And invariably what happens is a lot of staff turnover at that level. Now, we might think that a person taking on that role is not that important. We don't pay them a lot of money. We don't have high expectations of them, but their role is vitally important in terms of their progress through the industry and our responsibility as professionals to mentor and guide them through that process. So I'm going to go through, in my opinion, 11 or 12 points that I think will give you some insight into the importance of onboarding, both for yourself in future positions and for your responsibility as an employer at the club that you might be at, or the facility that you're currently running. So let me just find this thing. That's it. And I want to start off with, so these are effective points. None of them are set in stone. Nothing here is something you have to do. It's just some of the things that I think are very important. And to give you some background, I was very fortunate to work for the Four Seasons Hotel in Mauritius. By the way, it's nice to see Patrick Foy on the call here. But Mauritius and Four Seasons, being a five-star hotel, were very specific about the way they introduce people into their business. So to introduce any person into your team, when I'm on the wrong slide, that's a great start. You know, tech is hard for me here. Just give me a break. Here we go. Okay, so first of all, what are we doing? You know, you've had the interview, you've gone through a multitude of different discussions with a whole lot of young people, and you've now identified Joe. And Joe is going to be joining your team shortly. So the kind of communication, the kind of setup, the kind of onboarding process that he goes through will invariably determine how he takes on his position. So once you've decided to make the appointment, a friendly mail message, however you decide to do that, would go out to this individual. And importantly, he would now get in writing the starting date, his time, because a lot of these kids don't realize that in the golf business, sometimes you start at 5 o'clock in the morning. And I think importantly, grooming requirements. This is something, and please, everybody's welcome to comment on this, but as an older guy, I guess I've been around for a long time, I think the grooming requirements and the grooming standards of young people working in the golf shops, in my opinion, is not 100% up to speed. So there's an opportunity to address that particular point in an introductory lesson, letter. You would then get some of his basic information. Now, a lot of the kids who come work for us, we don't know who their mother and father are. We don't even know where they live. They don't tell us this stuff. So they're going to get an alternative email address and some idea of their family. And then the documents that they're going to require on day one in terms of HR is going to be some form of residence, recognition of where they live, a driver's license, if we're going to expect them to drive around and do things for us, their academic qualifications, which we would have discussed in the interview process, but it's quite important to have these things on file. I think it's very important. And then we're going to talk about something that we've had many discussions about within the PGA, and I trust that all of you are up to speed with safeguarding. But in some instances, to have rules and part of contractual obligations is alcohol, drug tests, consent, etc. And you can sort of pad that up as much as you want. But I think safeguarding effectively takes care of it. And the individual's responsibility will be to go through the safeguarding process, because that is a requirement of the PGA. Then a handbook is something that very few people have. And the handbook gives you a constant reminder of all the things that you need to do in your job. And we'll get into it in a slide or two. And then what are you going to expect on your first day? So this person, when they arrive on their very first day and they're coming to join your business, they've got an outline of what's going to happen. So their expectation of what's going to happen is relatively straightforward. If we go to creating a little pack, do we ever do that? Do we know we give the guy a shirt in a plastic bag and maybe a house it and show him around and that's it? But I think, again, it goes back to the professionalism of you and your business in terms of how you welcome any new person into your business. So we've discussed the welcome letter. The handbook is probably something that not many people have. And I would encourage you to find a version of a handbook and start creating your own one just for your own interest. I think it's very good for your business and for any new employer to understand what his responsibilities are within that business. The organizational chart is quite important, and we'll expand on that a little bit, but to understand who's who at the golf club. And if necessary, I think it really helps if you have photographs of these people, particularly the chairman, the club captain, the influential board members and club committee members and so on, that this individual can start to quickly recognize them and start to make a contribution to your business. Obviously, the compensation and benefits information. I've been in situations over the last little while where I know that employees have only received a contract 3-4 months later after they've started working. They only found out how the commission structures and everything worked 2-3-4 months after that started. That's not fair on either of you. And I think those things are very important, because the main reason we're going there is to make money and earn a living. Training material. What are the training materials that this individual might need? If it's a very new and raw person, they might need as simple introductory to using the telephone. And then it goes on to obviously being able to utilize the point of sale systems, etc., efficiently. And then what is your company all about? On a resort, for example, there's a multitude of other sports. Of course, most clubs now have paddle. They have these wonderful TrackMan driving range facilities. There's coaching facilities. There's food and beverage opportunities outside of the clubhouse. There's a number of different things that need to be highlighted in terms of this individual's information. And then emergency numbers. Should something happen, God forbid nobody has a heart attack on this guy's first day and you're not there. What is he going to do? Where is he going to go? How does he find out what sort of procedures he should follow to avoid any problems? I've spoken about the peripheral activities on the property. And then, in the last little while, we've heard of golf clubs getting burned down, hotels getting burned down. What are those evacuation procedures? And that can go into first aid, who's qualified, should he be qualified, should they be qualified, etc., etc. So there's a number of things that could be incorporated in that new team members pack that gives them the foundation of what the business is all about, and also gives them a sense of belonging because they've now been let into the inner circle, so to speak. Then, most importantly, I find in today's day and age, obviously, with access to various forms of hardware, the computer systems, the software that's associated with it, you arrive there and 2 weeks later, you finally get an email address and you've missed a few tricks and you don't have a business card because the guy forgot to print them, blah, 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 whatever it might be. Just get ahead of that. On the first day, the guy's got his computer? Should that be part of his tools? He's got some pens, he's got business cards, he's got all that kind of stuff. And importantly, he has got an understanding of how the systems work. And we're going to go through the process of the point of sale, because not everybody understands that, and it can be complicated and long-winded. So it just gives you an indication from an IT point of view, the importance of these things that we kind of take for granted. And I listen to teachers talking about going over the top. A 24 handicap has got no clue what that is, but it's something that sort of slides off our tongues quite comfortably. So don't assume that these new employees understand what you're talking about all the time. The work area, we all want to know what our boundaries are. Where can I go? Where am I going to sit? Where's my workstation placed? What do I have access to? These things I've mentioned already, pens and pencils, other requirements. I think those things are vitally important in terms of this person getting comfortable and feeling part of where everything is, how everything works. The use of telephones and mobile, of course, mobiles we see a lot. Walk into a store anytime and there's a guy propped up in the corner on his phone. He's not really engaged with the customers, and there needs to be rules around those things. And I'm sure many of you are exposed to or do employ rules that limit those things. And as I've mentioned, the emergency phone numbers, the activation of alarms, unusual or suspicious packages, these are things that are real. What happens if someone slips and falls? General medical assistance. And then, of course, reporting on the accidents. How does that work? What forms do you fill in? Where do you go? These are things that are going to be needed to be in place for a new employee to understand what they've got to do. A site tour. A golf club is a big property, and it incorporates a number of things. And some of their estates have spas, they have hotel facilities, they have a multitude of restaurants. There's, as I mentioned already, there's paddle and tennis, and in some instances, cricket. There's a whole lot of other things that constitute what this facility is all about. And a map and a clear understanding of where everything is, how it works. This is not something that takes one day. This is a planned process that takes a couple of days, introducing this individual to the important people within that business. The golf course superintendent, obviously, if you work in a golf shop, you need to know what's going on in a golf course, and having knowledge of who that person is, how they operate, and what sort of parameters they work within is important for this young person to know. I've said already the committee members and board members, who are they? Who are the ones you're going to look out for? A little bit of insight into that. The security protocols we've mentioned slightly. The course details, if you don't get a scorecard on your first day and you understand that the 15th hole stroke 1, how many bunkers are on the golf course, you go and ask any of the young guys in your store, in the retail environment, how many bunkers on the golf course. I'd be very surprised if more than 2 or 3% get it right. So these are details that people would like to know, and it's important for them to know, because of course then they can be in an informed position and be able to help the guests and members that are coming into the club. The company culture, the state, the culture, the club's culture. Every single club has got its own little nuances in terms of culture. What are those cultural things? How do we address them, and how do we communicate them effectively so that these new employees are able to start getting a feel for what they should expect over the tenure of their position? And importantly, the history of the club. There's so many beautiful stories, and I think I've been going to Swartkoop for a million years, and every time I go there, I always stop in the passage and there's something new and interesting to read about a golfer. And it's historic things about golf in general. It's not specific to Swartkoop, but it's history, and it's important. And I think a lot of the time we undervalue the amount of uptake we get of history and how it defines etiquette and the way we respect the game. So the history of the club and the estate and the company, how long it is, how long it's been there, why it was there. There's always some sexy stories around the guy who decided to build a golf course here. Of course, the easiest example is Sol Kersner decided to go in a helicopter and find a piece of ground, build a golf course. Wow, how did it work? And people love stories. Golf is about stories, and that can become quite a compelling story to share. So that culture, it's very, very important. And getting an understanding of the culture of the team can be in the form of a lunch. It depends on how you see this. But generally, a lunch or a dinner or breakfast, a lot of people take the guard down a little bit. They share more stories than they normally would under a formal sort of presentation environment. And it gets people to talk, and it gets the new employee to understand some of the cultural points that are relevant to their job in this new position, how they see themselves, and what they need to learn and upskill themselves going forward. The recognition is something we all love, and we all like it. Everyone wants to know if then they won the club championships or the Farmers Weekly on Wednesday, they're now to have their photograph in the newsletter. The same will apply to a new person, so that everyone knows who they are. There's nothing worse than going into the shop as a senior manager, and there's a new person. You don't even I think the building understanding of the facility is vitally important. So mentors is something that we've all been very fortunate to have access to. I think generally the people who work in the golf community are naturally giving people, and they always want to help, and they always want to give you some guidance. So by introducing a buddy system at a lower level, and no disrespect to a person who comes into their first job in the golf business, they need some help. They need someone who's going to hold their hand periodically. And you could find people in every different vertical within your business. That might be in the greenkeeping side, F&B, the spa, the tennis club, the paddle courts, who's going to just hold this guy's hand and give him a little insight into what that business is all about and how it ties back into the central function of membership. And these mentors should be people who have got a little bit of experience. It's pointless giving the guy someone who's only been there for a few months to then tell them how things work. It doesn't really have the same effect. So I think that whole new employee person has to go through a very stressless experience in terms of getting integrated into the team. It happens so much faster if all of these things that we've mentioned so far are put in place. So you're going to set some goals for this person. You're going to sit with them and let them understand what goals they need, why they need the goals, and what those goals are relevant to the business. So let's just say we've employed a young person to focus on retail, and we want that person to obviously do well. We're going to manage and monitor that over the 30, 60, or 90 days, whatever you decide, depending on the magnitude of the opportunity. And you're going to then go through this process with that person. So let's be specific. We want to improve ball sales over the next 6 months, 3 months, 4 months, 2 months, whatever it is. That's the objective. And we want to increase it by 20%. Is that measurable? Sure it is, because we can check on the point of sale system and see how we're progressing. Is it attainable? 20%. If you're already selling 5,000 balls a month, perhaps it's a little hard. But if you're only selling 20, sure, it's attainable. And you would then be able to adjust that. Is it relevant to your business? Of course it is, because the more balls you sell, the more customers you're going to get, the more second-hand balls you're going to see, the more people are going to want to change, upgrade, find knowledge, etc., etc. And the timing of it is also very important, because it needs to be delivered within the time frames that you've already agreed on right up front. So SMART goals, they can be small things. And I think all of those things really help to get the person onboarded correctly, bought into the system, and understand the importance of a small thing, like setting whatever that goal. It doesn't have to be a massive thing. You're not going to change your business. But if they change themselves in small little bites continually through systems like this, SMART goals can really help you. I like these acronyms, by the way. Then, these people need to ask questions. And one of the things that I find with a lot of young people these days, they don't like asking questions. They rather Google it and find out for themselves. And those are things about being relevant, because that's something you need to consider. When you took on your first job, it's an intimidating situation. You're sitting with this guy who's got years of experience. You're going into some uncharted waters, and you're too scared to ask a question because you might seem a little silly. But a lot of those questions you asked yourself. So try and feel that. It's not for everybody, because it's a bit of empathy. We preach empathy all the time in our slogan as PJ members, but it's an empathy call. I think a lot of times, a lot of the young people don't really understand what is expected of them. And it's so important that there's clarity on all that. There is a contract, there is a job description, and so on. But there's a multitude of factors that are outside of a job description. We for a long time, we worried all the time about how an individual's IQ teed up for them. IQ doesn't matter anymore. You can be clever, it doesn't help you. if you've got EQ, emotional quadrant, that helps you a lot. Because that's what we rely on as golf professionals, is having EQ, having emotional connection to people. But in more recent times, the most important, and based on the back end of COVID, has been AQ, which is the agility quadrant. How are you able to be flexible enough to see circumstances, change them, help them? And therein will be the example that you send to this young person. When you do get an unhappy customer who comes in, the way you handle it will be a guideline for him. And I think the specifics around that are very important, and will help that person along the way. Don't underestimate the fact that everybody knows what you know. It's definitely not the case. So you need to go through things maybe once, twice, maybe sometimes a little bit more, to get some of these young people to understand what you're looking for. I think the training resources to accommodate new employees is accessible to us all the time. If we just take equipment as a start, every time a rep comes to visit you, it's their obligation to spend time with these young people and train them about the new ball, the new driver, the new wedge, the fabric, the shoes, blah, whatever it is, their obligation to do that. And if this new employee is not taking advantage of that, then they're going to come out, they're going to fall short. So it becomes a requirement. I think a lot of the reps, unfortunately, these days don't do that effectively. And it's something that helps your business, runs your business, and gives you insight into what's going on in the world of golf. I've used another simple idea here with regard to service, because we're in the service industry. So what does service actually stand for? It's quite straightforward there. Smile. How hard is that? How hard is it? Do you smile enough? Never mind your new employee. Do you smile enough? Do you smile at people? Do you show the love for the game that we all have just built into ourselves? Eye contact is something that young people battle with. Looking at their phone, looking at the window, looking at something else. Eye contact is important. And of course, recognition. So the sooner you learn people's names, Mr. So-and-so, or if you are comfortable to call them by their first name, so be it. And recognition is very important in terms of service. The way you speak, the tone of your voice, the content of your speech, the way you articulate whatever you're doing is very important. And how informed are you? And that's going to come back from your appetite to learn and to study what is going on in the golf business. So how informed is this person going to become? And do you care? You know, caring about people is so important, and all the time endeavoring to exceed whatever you should be doing. And that little acronym makes up service. And I think that's quite an important thing that you could share with your current staff and definitely with new staff. I think very, very important, as I mentioned earlier, you know, you see a guy wandering around the shop, and the CEO or the general manager or the GM or whatever it is walks in and goes, "Who are you?" So the importance of everybody getting the opportunity to meet this new employee is very, very important. And each one of those will share different expectations with them. For example, we've got the CFO. The CFO he's not a guy who fits in the agility quadrant or the empathy quadrant. He's a person who just wants to know the numbers. You need to understand that, and you need to understand his expectations around particularly the accuracy of recording green fees, for example. But I think each of these people can share. And I would highly advise that every new employee has a minimum of 10 minutes with each of the senior management to understand where they are, what they expect of him, and how that's going to work. Some of it works out well, some of it doesn't, but at least you've gone through that process and it helps. I think very, very important is follow up and feedback. You know, so we employ somebody, they carry on, give them a hard time because they didn't do one or two things, and you carry on. And next thing, it's a year gone by, the guy wants an increase. You haven't discussed anything with him. You haven't monitored and followed up on various things. And in a lot of instances, some of these people can outperform what you expected. And you find bigger positions for them. Your expectations change about what they can do. And by virtue of the fact that they've taken cognizance of all the points above, they have now become a really good employee. They're part of the business. They're part of the club. And they're making a massive difference for you and are giving you a whole lot of insight into what your business needs, should and shouldn't need. So I think there's a lot of communication here. And communication is what we talk about all the time, whether it be through emails or just a one-on-one. I think communication is vitally important. I'm just going to go back to the home, yeah. Okay, cool. So generally, I think obviously this has been recorded, and I'm sure if you want these slides, you're more than welcome to get them however you wish to. But I think it just gives you an outline, and most importantly, I just wanted to highlight the importance of doing this right, because we run into problems in our business because we didn't do these things correctly in the beginning. And we have expectations about people coming in, and they have expectations about what they're going to do. And at no point do we clarify that, and at no point do we measure it. And that's a recipe for disaster. So the role of onboarding is slightly different to orientation, because orientation is your first day. How's it? This is so and so. Good luck. But onboarding is at least a 15-day experience. So each day you're exposing to different things. In some instances, and in my frame of reference is obviously, as I mentioned, the 4 seasons, I didn't go into my office for the first 3 days because I had to learn so many different things. And so if a guy walked in on the first day and said, my account's incorrect, I didn't say, well, it's my first day, I don't know what to do. I took him to Nico. I said, hey, Nico, this is the guy. He's got a problem. I hold his hand, show him the thing. Suddenly there was a different vibe around his query. And of course, the recognition part of it was very important. It's just one of many examples. So that's kind of, I didn't want to belabor this thing. I know everyone's got lots of things to do. I would love to entertain any questions if there are some, any points that you might have. And you're more than welcome to contact me personally or directly, or however you want to do that, should you want any further information about this. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask.
If you would like to ask a question, please just unmute yourself and ask.
So there's no question. That's fantastic. Oh, it was amazing. What was terrible and you didn't enjoy anything. But I think I want to just reiterate the importance of doing this, because it sets you up for other stuff. It's like when you go and play golf, you're going to hit a few balls first, you chip and you putt, and so you prepare yourself to play well. If you don't do that, you don't play well. And that's a sort of indication of how this has an influence over your business in terms of what you do in preparing yourself for a successful relationship with an employee who is going to, in a lot of instances, be in charge of your facility. When especially that, yes, sir.
Hi, Dave. How are you doing? Nice to see you. Thanks for all this brilliant information. On a personal note, we shared the trenches together for seasons for a couple of years, and on that point, we did our 2 weeks, which I called being 4 seasonized, indoctrinated. We did it together. Very, very memorable 2 weeks. Do you think there's a line that you can go over? Because we both came out of 4 seasons. I think we both agree it was an incredible experience. We recommend the corporate structure second to none. Way of everything there was just that level higher. But my question is, can you go a step too far? Can you push? Can you be indoctrinated a bit too much?
I think that's a great question, Patrick, and thanks for being on here all the way from Mauritius. Yeah, it was a great time, and we both benefited from it. But I think also our personalities are a little bit more outgoing. So sometimes it can be an intimidating situation. But then you've got to go back and question your interviewing skills and the appointment, because you've appointed somebody to be front of house. In this instance, I'm talking about a newbie, young guy coming in to be an assistant professional or retailer. You've appointed somebody based on a whole lot of information. If you haven't done your due diligence properly, some of this information might be intimidating for a person who's not prepared for that. So I think probably another conversation is around the interviewing process and the appointment process. Because invariably what happens now, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that most of the time, the most affordable person gets the job, not the best person. So it's a subtle difference, and it has an impact on the future of that particular business. So I think to your question, it can be intimidating. It can be a lot of work. But again, if you see the long-term benefit of going through all of these processes, understanding the nuts and bolts of the business, the culture of the business, and bearing in mind, in this example, Four Seasons Hotel is arguably one of the best 5-star hotel groups in the world. So they they're expecting people to deliver exceptional service all the time, and therefore they're investing in that. We as golf operators at whatever club it might be, we also expecting exceptional service, but we're not investing in a process that demands, creates, and inspires people to give exceptional service. So that is the point. So what is in this document, the points that I've raised here, is probably all of the things I could think of. Some of them might not be relevant to you, but it gives you a new sort of frame of reference. I think a thing that has been very beneficial to me in a motivation of people has been to have some form of handbook, which is live, because it changes all the time. Things change. For us as older professionals to be relevant, you have to be reading things, you have to be focusing on stuff, you have to be engaging with people so you can understand where the moving parts are going in the business, and most importantly, who is driving that. These young people that are coming into the business have high expectations of their careers as golfers. And I see some of them fall out the bus because they thought they were going to play golf 4 times a week and get lots of free balls and drivers and cool stuff. And it's not like that. And perhaps we tee that up incorrectly in the first place. So to your point, which is a good one, if you've employed somebody who's intimidated by this, it's not the right person to be in your store.
I agree 100%. So what I find I get from you, and I agree with you, is the onboarding gives you the opportunity to see if you are going to fit in, if you're going to like it, if it's for you or for me. Thank you, Dave.
No, thanks, Patrick. I think to that point, invariably what we do, I've employed Nico. He starts on the first day. I give him 3 months or a month's probation. There's no feedback sessions. We don't talk about anything. He seems to be okay. He comes to work on time. He's sort of worked out the point of sale system. He says hello to the members and he sells a couple of balls. He's fine. I'll just extend his contract. But we haven't really gone through a process whereby he understands the bigger picture. He understands my expectations of him and vice versa. So those discussions are very, very important. We're also seeing a lot of young ladies joining the golf industry. And there's a big intimidation factor there because, every golfer, when he gets to the golf club and his wife's not around, he thinks he's Richard Gere. And if you're a good-looking young lady behind the counter, you also got to deal with that stuff. So how do we assist with the conflicts? How do we deal with that? Because that's relevant and it's real. And it's something that we've got to be very, very aware of as employers. So I guess there's quite a lot of things that go outside of what I've presented today. I just want you to take that and kick it around and massage it into what suits you and your business, because this is very generic. And each one of us run different businesses with different expectations and a multitude of different moving parts. And those things need to be addressed accordingly in our onboarding process. And it's fact, and these are facts that I managed to find, that 93% of people that are employed and don't go through any form of orientation or onboarding are inclined to leave the business within 6 months. So we all want to feel part of something. And I think if you look at us as a group today on this call, we're all part of the PGA. We get exposed to, courtesy of Adrian and Francois, we get exposed to upgrading ourselves, upskilling ourselves, learning new things. It's very important. And I encourage that all the way. But we're talking about a young person who's just coming into the industry. How exciting is this industry? It is. But if we're not sharing it, if we're not telling them what it is, if we're not encouraging them and exposing them to all the different elements of the business, we're leaving them out to dry. They're going to lose interest. They're going to get bored and want to do something else.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, Dave Dietrich here. I just want to ask you a quick question with regards to record keeping on these things. So from a leader's perspective, how important do you feel it is to keep record of this, not just for yourself, but also for the staff member to kind of keep them accountable to whatever they've gone through? So I just wanted to see if you've got any feedback with regards to that.
Thank you so much. That is a fantastic question. So in bigger operations, there'll be an HR department and there'll be a whole lot of forms that get filled in and so on that goes to that person. But if you're running a relatively small business with a small team, you'll be in your own interest on your computer just to open a file in each person's name. Every time something happens, at 10:10, I spoke to Constance. We discussed X, Y, and Z. and this was the outcome. And I've got it on my file. So in 6 months' time, when there is a major problem, I can say, listen, Constance, just come with me. Here's the file. This is what I addressed at periods of time during you've been working. We're all too lazy to do that. Guys, you've got to protect yourselves. And ladies, you have to protect yourselves in terms of these things, because everyone goes to the CCMA, or there's a multitude of different ways of dealing with this. And you can find someone stealing and you've got to pay them to go away. It's ridiculous because you haven't followed processes, but that's probably another conversation. I think the onboarding thing is to tee up all of those things. So to your point, yes, get a little file and open a file on each person. As you do things, make sure that you are documenting them. And should it be of a more serious note, then that they acknowledge that and sign it, so that you keep that on file. And filing, and historically, without exception, I think none of us are very good on administrative functionality. We need somebody who's going to do that. But it's very, very important. And guys, that's become relevant now, because if there's a problem, you can get accused of all kinds of things based on nothing. And you really haven't got an out. So I think it's a great point. And it's something, if you have an HR consultant, even if you have somebody comes into your business once a month or once every 2 months, just to upgrade the files, check that people are doing what they should be doing, deal with any disciplinary things, deal with any underperformance, and also at the same time recognizing and applauding good performance, because that's something that we tend to neglect as well. So those are things that should come out of firstly the interview process, and then importantly, as I've covered, the onboarding process. I hope that answers your question.
Yep, thanks, Dave.
Good morning, happy 24. Just in terms of once the new member has been in employment for 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, whatever, we do an evaluation. We do a staff appraisal every year. Is that recommended, or is once a year too little, too much? I don't know. Your thoughts?
No, absolutely. I think firstly, that's again, not a lot of people do that, even once a year. So you could do that with a new person. You want to do that probably even once a month for the first 3 months, then every other month, and then go into a quarterly evaluation of what they're doing, because a new person is going to be exposed to and be learning so many different things that could influence, help, or mess up your business. So you need to be on top of that all the time. But most companies will have an annual report and go through that with you, and that would determine bonuses and all that kind of stuff. But the more you do that, the more interaction you have with the staff, the more you're going to get out of them, the more vested they're going to be in what you are trying to achieve. And the more you're telling them, helping them, mentoring them, guiding them, recognizing them. When somebody does something well, we never say anything, but when they do something bad, we give them a hard time. And unfortunately, I think a lot of the younger people now can't deal with getting told they're doing something wrong. And we got to be cognizant of that, So I think your point is very, very valid. You need to decide what it is. How important it is to your business? How important it is for you to have good staff? That's going to determine how often you're going to evaluate them.
Thanks, Dave.
Cool. Is there anything else?
Morning, Dave. Sorry, it's Dean here. Compliments to everybody.
Thanks, buddy.
Firstly, I want to apologize. I arrived a bit late, so I've missed out on the first half of the webinar. But I just want to say thank you very much for your time, and obviously to Francois and Adrian for putting this together. Just a few comments with regards to the induction. It's like you say, it's so important what we put in, because at the end of the day, what we put in with a newbie is going to determine their future. If it's something that they're going to enjoy and we've done the right job, their future is just going to be endless. If it's something that we do badly, they're going to hate it, like you say, and after 3-6 months, they're going to want to leave. So putting in that time effort, I think, is very, very important. And then also something which Pat has just said now is that, as a team, they can either make or break your business depending on how much time you put in with them. So yeah, I think that induction at the end of the day is very important. But I just wanted to say thank you very much to you and to the team for putting this together.
No, thanks, Dean. I mean, you work in a big machine, so you've got a lot of staff. You've got 2 golf courses. Your challenges are slightly bigger, and I'm sure you've got an HR department. So some of the elements of this discussion would get taken on by somebody else within your structure. But I highly recommend, one of the things that I made a point of, and doesn't make me a genius or anything, but I made a point of being in all of these things because it was really cool to see how the staff reacted to stuff, and it might be somebody else who's driving it, but it was nice for me to also learn about people by doing that. And I just want to leave you with one last thing, which I felt as subsequent to onboarding was the very important integration of staff. And what we did successfully many times was took all of our staff. So if I use Copperleaf as an example, we had 84 staff there that worked in the spa, that worked on the golf course, that worked in golf ops, and worked in admin. We took those 80 people and we juggled them, we put them in a hat, and they all got drawn out in groups of 20. And 20 people went to the workshop, 20 people went to the spa, 20 went to F&B, and 20 went to operations. And one of the people that represented that region would talk about it. They then would do that for 20 minutes and swap. So the people who were in the workshop then went to the spa and so on. At the end of that, the amount of respect that those staff had for one another because they understood what it was about, and particularly the greenkeeping staff. Those guys work so hard. They wake up early in the morning, they do all kinds of stuff. No one really knows what they do. And when the lady from the spa went into the workshop and saw a guy reverse a 1.5 million rand green fairway mower, she was blown away by his ability to manipulate this thing. And it changed her attitude. She thought that the greenkeeping staff just walked around with weed eaters and hose pipes. She had no clue. And by the same token, the guy from the kitchen who went into the spa and realized and smelt, he was sensitive to smell because he makes food. So he was overawed by the smells in the spa and the neatness of the spa and the attitude of the people, the grooming of the staff. So it had such a massive impact on everybody. So there's a lot of these little stories, little nuggets of information that can change the staff, their attitude to life, their attitude to one another, and most importantly, the input and attitude to your opportunity that you've given them. But you've given them nothing. You've got to give them of your time, of yourself, of your education, of your expertise, and all the little things that you've learned over time. So to all the young people coming into the game, let's make it exciting for them. Let's make it as exciting as it has been for us for so many years. It's a wonderful place to be, and I hope you all have a spectacular 2024.
Thanks so much, Dave, and thanks for your time and sharing all those nuggets of information. I'm sure it's very valuable to all of us. Thanks also to each and every pro that came to watch, and also leave your camera on. Obviously, that's quite important nowadays. Also, we look forward to the next webinar. We hope to see each and every one of you there. Like Dave also said, all the best for the year ahead, and looking forward to the next session. Dave, thanks so much once again, and enjoy your day, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Much appreciated.
Cheers. Thank you.
Okay.